Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, this is my co-host Teddy, and today we're going to be discussing Intel's upcoming i9 CPUs and what do we know so far. So obviously more details will be revealed soon, as they're supposedly going to launch in like 2 or 3 weeks or something like that, so very interesting there. But I thought we'd do this video anyways, just as a bit of fun, and talk about what we know with these CPUs. So let's start with the socket then. So it's going to be coming in on the LGA 2066 socket. That's to replace Broadwell's LGA 2011-3 socket, or 2011 revision 3, and of course Haswell's 2011. So that's quite interesting. That also means that your coolers will not fit if you have whatever you're running with your Broadwell CPU will not fit. It also means it's going to be a new motherboard to replace the aging X99, which was very revolutionary. When X99 first launched, it was a big jump ahead, especially in the memory department. But it had a lot of problems when it first launched, and a lot of those problems never got fixed to, a good degree. So this will be very good to replace X99. So far, we don't actually know much about X299, so that'll be a very interesting thing there. Obviously, it'll be a big leap ahead because X99 is very old now in the tech world anyway. So I'm looking forward to what it's going to feature, but given what you get on Z270, I would imagine there'll be quite a few advances there. So let's talk about the CPUs themselves then. We'll start with the very top dog, their new flagship. So that's going to be the i9 7920X. That'll be a 12-core, 24-thread, 160-watt TDP CPU. And we don't know what the clock speeds are right now. It's 160 watts. It's getting up there. I remember, what was it, the 9590 when that came out from AMD. That was 220-watt TDP, and people were just like, wow. But it seems like current direction we're going, we're going to be getting up there sometime soon with AMD Threadripper as well, looking like it's going to have a pretty high TDP also. But yeah, this one will be at the flagship. I would imagine the clock speeds would be something like a 3.5 gigahertz base and a 4 gigahertz turbo, maybe higher than that. We'll just have to see, but that'll be a very, very powerful CPU at the top there. The CPU we do know more about is the next one down, the 10-core, coming in to replace the 6950X Broadwell CPU, and that's going to be the 7900X. So that's a 10-core, 24-thread, oh, that should be 20-thread, I wrote my script wrong, sorry guys, 3.3 base clock, 4.5 gigahertz boost clock, that'll probably be on a single thread though, 160 watt TDP. So yeah, this will be very, very impressive, and this is the one I'll be watching the most for a variety of reasons, as we'll talk about a bit later on. If you manage to get a 10-core to do 4.5 gigahertz on all 10 cores, that is going to be unbelievably powerful. That'll be such a powerful CPU. So this one will be quite interesting. We'll talk about pricing a little bit later too. But yeah, this will be a very good one to watch, and I think depending on the price point it comes in at, I mean, we know this is going to be extremely powerful, but it could give AMD a few problems there. Let's drop down to something that's more directly in competition with AMD's Ryzen 7 CPUs, and that's going to be the new Skylake-X 8-core CPU to replace my CPU, the 6900K. So it's going to be called the 7820X. It'll be an 8-core, 16-thread CPU, the 3.6 GHz base clock, and a 4.5 GHz boost clock, once again on probably a single core, and a 140 watt TDP. So this will be, in my mind anyway, made to directly bring the fight to the Ryzen 7 CPUs. We'll have to see price point wise where it comes in at, but that is a very high boost clock or turbo clock from an 8-core CPU. Given that Ryzen in general's biggest sort of hindrance has been clock speed, mainly that the Ryzen 7s, you won't get many over 4 gigahertz. You should be able to get 4 gigahertz out of them, but only very rarely will people get like 4.1 out of them. And that's talking on all of the 8 cores. So yeah, this will be quite an interesting CPU. Let's hope it's quite powerful. But yeah, once again, 4.5 gigahertz on all 8 cores, that will be a powerful, powerful CPU. And let's go down to now the entry-level i9 CPU. So this will be a 6-core made to take on the Ryzen 5 CPUs, hopefully, the 1600X and 1600. And this will be to replace the outgoing 6800K and 6850K. So you won't be getting 2 SKUs of 6 cores this time around. You'll just get the one. And it's going to be called the 7800X. So that'll have 6 cores, 12 threads, 3.5 GHz base clock, and a 4 GHz turbo clock, and a 140 watt TDP. It's interesting there. I'm not sure if this will end up being true or not, the fact that it's going to be coming in with those lower clock speeds. To be perfectly honest though, most people buying them, the vast majority of people buying i9s will be enthusiasts, and all of these will be unlocked, so they will be overclocking them. I doubt many people will run i9 CPUs at their stock frequencies unless there's a very specific reason for them doing so. So yeah, this one will be quite interesting to see how it can bring it to the Ryzen 6 cores, and maybe how it brings it to the Ryzen 8 cores as well, depending on how high you could take this thing. I mean, if this guy goes really high in terms of clock speeds, like KB Lake levels, you know, getting up like 4.6, 4.7 on all 6 cores, that will be very, very powerful. And it should be quite interesting to look at. But when we dive a bit deeper and look at PCIe lanes and the L3 cache, we notice that Skylake-X, these i9s, are gonna actually be a bit cut down compared to their Broadwell E counterparts. So to a lot of people, the i9s, or before that, these i7 Extreme CPUs were supposed to be sort of no-holds CPUs. You know, Intel would just put all the bells and whistles on them, everything you want, and that's why they could charge so much money for them. With the Skylake-X i9s, it seems like on the bottom 2 i9s anyway, it seems like they've nerfed them back quite a bit in terms of PCIe lanes. So if you're not aware, on Broadwell E, on all of them except the 6800K, you would get 40 PCIe lanes. And that's pretty good, very good actually. Most people won't even come close to using all of them, but I'm sure some people do. Now with Skylake-X, it's looking like the top 2, the 12 core and the 10 core, will have 44 PCIe lanes. That's good, up from the 40 of Broadwell E. But on the bottom 2, the 8 core and the 6 core, that will be dropping down to 28. So that means if you had a 6850K or a 6900K, like me, you'll actually be going down if you were to upgrade to the equivalent on Skylake-X in terms of core to core. Now, Intel's reasoning for doing this will be to save money, because they're going to probably, well, they're going to have to. If these are coming in at the same price point, then no, it's not going to happen. It will be to save money. I don't want to make this video too technical, because I try not to do that with my channel in general, because I don't want to lose you guys that maybe aren't as sort of deep into computer tech as others are. But basically on the physical CPU itself, the die, it does cost money to add the support for, say, 44 lanes as opposed to 28. So that will mean to actually manufacture them, it will be cheaper, and so that's good. That hopefully will pass on those savings to you. But the question is, how many do you actually need? So if we look at, say, Ryzen 7 on X370, you get 24. And that's pretty good. I would imagine that is enough for the majority of users out there that are running a single GPU and probably just, you know, an NVMe drive or something like that. That'll be very solid for you guys out there. So I think the 28 will be fine, but certain users may want more, so they will obviously now have to spend that extra money and go up to that 10 core in order to get the 44 lanes. So it's an interesting move there from Intel. Which brings us now to another area where Skylake-X will be a bit cut down by comparison to Broadwell E, and that is to do with the L3 cache. So on Broadwell E, if you are not aware, on the 6950X, the 10 core, that had a 25 megabyte L3 cache. On the 8 core, the 6900K, what I run, has a 20 megabyte L3 cache, and on both the 6800K and the 6850K, you got 15. By comparison, if you do not know, Ryzen 7, all three Ryzen 7 CPUs come with a 16 megabyte L3 cache. Let's move over to Skylake-X then. So we see on the big guy, the 12 core there, you're only going to be getting 16.5 megabytes of L3 cache. So yeah, not really too ideal. Then we drop down to the 10 core, that goes down to 13.75. For the 8 core, you get 11, and for the 6 core, the 7800X, you get 8.25 megabytes of L3 cache. So once again, that's a considerable drop down. That's almost half for the 8 cores and 6 cores going from Broadwell E to Skylake-X. Now, that once again will be to save money when manufacturing these CPUs, and that will most likely be offset by the higher clock speeds. Now, I'm thinking the reasoning why Intel did this is because in games, it won't make a very big difference for the most part anyways, and the fact that it'll be offset with those higher clock speeds will mean that performance will most likely be increased. Well, of course it will be. Intel won't be releasing the Skylake-X CPUs, which are slower than their Broadwell E counterparts. They've obviously thought this through. And it'll be good for saving money. But it'll be interesting to see how these do once it comes to productivity stuff, which generally will utilize it a lot more. But I'll do that once I get to my testing. Overall, this just seems like another money-saving thing. And in general, I would say, as a 6900K owner, I can understand where Intel's going with this. The Ryzen CPUs are extremely good value for money in terms of how much you pay to how many cores you get, and like cache and everything else. So I can understand why Intel will be doing this and trying to cut down these CPUs in some areas to reduce the price. And that's the final thing we'll talk about in this video, is the price. We do not know it just yet. I've tried searching around, but I can't really find anything on it. But I would imagine they will need to half the cost of these, well, the price I should say, of these CPUs to be competitive. That 6-core CPU will have to come in at like a similar price point to, I doubt it'll be as cheap as the 1600X. I'll just throw that out there right now. But I would imagine it might be around the price point, or I'd hope it would be around the price point of something like the Ryzen 7 1700. In New Zealand, that's about the $480 mark. So hopefully it comes in at around the $500 or less price point. That's New Zealand dollars, that is. That would be very, very good there. With the 8-core, again, I would hope it drops down quite considerably, because the 6800K was not very good value for money. That was a lot of money for a CPU. So that's where I think Intel's going with this. Once we see the pricing, that should give us a better indicator. But yeah, Intel, you're really going to need to drop the pricing down if you want to be competitive with these Ryzen CPUs. And the fact that you've cut down these CPUs to the degree you've had, at least these bottom two CPUs, the i9 that is, they really need to bring the price down. And hopefully they do. I would hope that the 8-core i9 will be coming in at the same price point as the 1800X, and I think that would be very, very good for Intel if they could, you know, really bring it to the Ryzen 7s and the Ryzen 5 CPUs with these new i9s. But I want to ask you guys a question. Actually, I want to ask you a few questions, so comment and reply to whichever one you like. First one, how many PCIe lanes do you think you need, and how many would you want? I mean, we always want more, but considering if you're having to pay extra money for them, how many would you really want? What do you make of the i9 so far? And what price point do you think they'll be coming in at? Those are my 3 questions for you guys. So let me know in the comment section down below. Be very curious to what you guys make of these CPUs. Subscribe to my channel, Tech Showdown, as I've got a CPU showdown right around the corner. You guys are definitely going to want to catch that one. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.